Today was definitely a gnarly day in the canyon.
Should be fun.
Looks ideal.
That was vague.
Yeah.
This is like our second big rappel down Horn, but you can hear we're like right next to the river. It's pretty gnarly. It's really my only goal when hiking out of the canyon. Get to the top before dark. Hello folks, and welcome to a new type of video series that I've been wanting to do here on the channel for quite some time. A post-trip report podcast, or a post-adventure debrief. You guys probably know for the past 10 years, I have put out a lot of my different trips, a lot of trip videos, whether it's my through hiking video series like the PCT or the Arizona Trail, or it's a little small short film of a bike packing trip that I've done. But typically when I put out my videos, I'm a little more interested in the storytelling aspect of it, doing some talking head, showing my campsite, walking past the camera, showing the views, a little more cinematic, a little more to music. But for years, you guys have been asking for more info, more specific info about where my campsites are, how many miles that I'm doing every day, my elevation gain and loss, the amount of food that I carry, the amount of water that I carried, all the specifics of my trips. And it's just something that I have never really shared. Well, some of you also might know that for the past 3 years, I've been doing a podcast called the Outdoor Evolution Podcast, where I usually sit down and have a conversation about a certain topic with someone in the outdoor industry or the community. And for the better part of the last year, I've taken a bit of a hiatus from it. Well, lately I've been wanting to kind of do something new here on the channel, share more information about some of my trips that I take, and kind of get back to this podcast style where it's a little more off the cuff, a little more unedited. So this week I want to share with you guys a trip that I just did up at the Grand Canyon for 4 days and 3 nights. Not only doing some backpacking, but also doing some canyoneering and some pack rafting. If you guys haven't caught on yet, over the past 3 months, I've become absolutely addicted and fell head over heels with pack rafting, a awesome new way for me to kind of travel through the backcountry. So I can do some backpacking trips, but carry a boat, float some rivers, and then do some more hiking. It's just a fun new way to kind of spice things up, add a new tool to my backcountry toolbox, and I've absolutely loved it. Actually, I just put out a video on Friday where I did a full tour of a company called Alpaca. It's a pack rafting company that makes rafts. Check that out if you haven't yet. I'll put a link down below to that. But I got out on this Grand Canyon trip with a couple of the guys from Alpaca, not only just to get out into the canyon because it's the perfect time right now, it's December, but also to test some new prototypes of some boats that they're working on. So basically what we did for this trip was a 3-night loop. So we started at the Bright Angel Trailhead, which a lot of people are familiar with in the Grand Canyon, and we ended at the Hermit's Rest Trailhead. So I've done backpacking on both of them. Bright Angel is definitely more of a popular trail. If you've ever done a rim to rim or it's something that you're planning on, Bright Angel is typically the trail that you take to get down into the canyon. But for this trip specifically, right now they have shut down Bright Angel from about Indian Gardens, which is about, I think, 6 miles down or maybe 5 miles down all the way to the river. So needing to get onto the river, onto the Colorado to do some pack rafting, we had to figure out an alternative route, and we knew we wanted to end at Hermit's Rest. So let me pull up everything here. For this trip and for all my trips that I've been doing recently, I've been routing everything out on Onyx Backcountry. What I've loved about this is I'm actually able to route, these kind of crazy off-trail, unique trips that I'm doing, and then save it as an offline map, put it on my phone, and then I can actually use this while I'm out in the backcountry, especially in the Grand Canyon. There's no service. So being able to do all of this beforehand is great, so I know exactly how many miles I'm doing, the elevation gain and loss, etc. So as you can see, I have everything pulled up right here. This is kind of what most people are probably familiar with. This area right here is the south rim of the Grand Canyon. If you've ever visited the Grand Canyon, odds are that you were probably in this area. You have the South Rim Village. Over here is the South Kaibab Trail, which is actually the Arizona Trail, which is another super popular trail. And then you have the Bright Angel Trail. So you can see this yellow line here. That was the start of our trip. And then we ended over here a little more west at the Hermit's Rest Trailhead. So for this trip, because it was December, we actually had to do a shuttle, our own shuttle. So typically there is a shuttle bus that runs Hermit's Road, but in December, there's no bus running. So we actually had to go down and park a couple cars at Hermit's Rest so then we could drive ourselves back to where we started, which is at Bright Angel. So we started on Thursday. We went from Thursday to Sunday, and we got started right about 1 o'clock, mainly because we all had to meet up. It was me and 4 other guys. We had to drive our car out, park there, come back, get everything set up, get our packs together, all of our pack rafting equipment, backpacking equipment, rappelling equipment, all of this stuff. Speaking of that, if you want to see the gear that I carried for this hike, not only my typical backpacking gear, but also my pack rafting gear, like my pack raft, PFD, my paddle, and some new gear that I was actually testing, like a new freestanding tent that I recently picked up. I'll leave a link down below to my website. For these videos going forward, I'm going to be posting all of my gear list, so you can kind of check out everything that I was carrying if you're interested in that. For this trip, because of all the gear that I had, I was carrying probably close to 36 pounds. Now, that is, again, with backpacking equipment. That is with the pack rafting equipment, a little bit of rappelling equipment, and then 4 days of food. So that was 3 dinners, 3 breakfasts, 4 days of snacks and lunch. And then I took myself a little luxury item, which was a little bitty soft flask of whiskey. It's winter, it's a little chilly in the canyon, so I wanted to have a little bit of something special every night at camp. So I took a little bit of whiskey with me. I treated myself, as it were. So this was definitely more of a luxury hike. So I guess to go ahead and show you guys and to get started here, if we zoom in here, this yellow is my day 1. So if I click on it here, you can see that my day 1 is Bright Angel Trailhead to Horn Creek Camp. So it was about 7.1 miles for this first day. And because we're dropping into the canyon, obviously there's a lot of elevation loss. We had 3,354 foot of elevation loss and only 68 feet of elevation gain, which I think was like right towards the end of our day. So I'll go ahead and turn on the 3D here, kind of come over here to the rim. So you can kind of see the canyon here. And zooming in, again, if you've ever done any hiking in the canyon, odds are you've been down Bright Angel. It's definitely the most popular trail in the canyon. So we got started up here at the rim, at the trailhead, and then just instantly started dropping down into the canyon. When we got down here to, let me see, where are we at? Down here to Indian Gardens. Indian Gardens is one of the reasons why a lot of people use Bright Angel Trailhead is it's one of the trails that there is water about halfway down from the rim to the river. And where the water is here is at a campground called Indian Garden. So for us, that was also the jump off point because just a little bit past Indian Garden is where they have the trail shut down going down to the river. So what we ended up doing was we got down here to Indian Garden and we actually got water right here in this area. See if I can zoom in a little more. We got water right there. And then we jumped on to this trail. So we got off of the Bright Angel and started getting on to the Tanto Trail or the Tanto Basin. So in the Grand Canyon, the Tanto Basin and the Tanto Trail is pretty much like the flattest trail that you can get on in the canyon. It runs the Tanto Basin, which is this big shelf that goes through a big chunk of the canyon. I've done a bunch of hiking and backpacking on it. Last year I did a trip where we went down Hermit onto the Tanto, hiked out to Monument, came back. Awesome trip. But I've done a lot of hiking on the Tanto, so it was nothing new to me. But as you can see, I'll kind of zoom out here. You can see kind of how flat it gets. So by the time we got down to get the water, I would say it was probably about 3 p.m. So it gets dark at about 5 p.m. In the canyon. So I ended up loading up on about 2.5 liters of water, which was fine for me for that night to make dinner, to make some breakfast in the morning and coffee, and then have a little bit of water for our descent down to the river from Horn Camp. So as you can see, we kind of cruised along here on the Tanto. Cruise. Like I said, pretty flat, honestly. For the canyon, it's pretty flat. You can see everything right here. Cruised over here. I think that we probably did our little bit of elevation gain for the day, our 68 feet, somewhere on the Tanto. Little bitty hills, little bitty ups and downs. And then we ended up ending our day here on the Tanto at Horn Creek Camp. So a little bitty campsite. Not a ton of room there. There is like a little pit toilet there. And there is some very small trickle of water, but it is known to have, I want to say, I could be wrong on this, plutonium in it.
Plutonium. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
So it's not advised to drink water coming out of Horn Creek. So that's why we carried from Indian Garden. But again, had plenty of water. Camped there for the night. Got there at a decent time. Set up camp. Sat around. Ate dinner. Had a little bit of whiskey. We had some lights. So it was a little bit more of like a luxury camp for me. But got a good night's rest. And then the next morning was actually jumping off of the Tanto Trail and doing some off-trail stuff to get to the river. So in order to get to the river, basically there's a couple of different ways. So you can go down Bright Angel, right, which was closed, and you can see that right here. You can go down a little side wash right here at Monument Creek. You can kind of see that. You can go down on the Hermit Creek, but since we were doing a big loop, we chose to go down Horn. Now, what makes Horn interesting is, unlike some of the other washes to get down to the river, Horn doesn't have a trail. So it was basically all off-trail hiking, which made for a pretty interesting day and probably some of the craziest stuff that I've ever done in the canyon. So overall, from Horn to the river, we had 1.4 miles, 1,300 feet of elevation loss, and 215 feet of elevation gain. But what made it interesting is, like I said, there's no trail. So we were doing all off-trail stuff. And we had, I think, 4, maybe 5. No, there was 4 rappels into the canyon. So Horn Creek doesn't have a trail. There's a lot of times where you just get to a cliff and there's nothing. So we actually had to set up and do some big time rappels. So let me get into Horn a little bit here. See if I can kind of show you guys what it looked like going down Horn. So yeah, as you can see, we kind of cruised down through here. This spot right here was actually kind of difficult to get around. So we actually had to go up and over this little hump right here, some more off-trail stuff, and had to do some down climbing to get into this part of the canyon. And then once we had a couple small rappels that we had to do before getting there. But once we got to this area, see if I can kind of show you guys and zoom in on this. Right in here. Well, yeah, you can see it. My little route is off, but this right here, kind of hard to see from this. This was a 130-foot rappel down a vertical wall, which was nuts. Probably one of the craziest things that I've ever done in the Grand Canyon or on any backpacking trip, for that matter. But, you know, in the 1.4 miles, actually I was wearing my watch, my GPS watch, so I was able to track everything. In that 1.4 miles, it took us 3 hours and 7 minutes to make 1.4 miles because, again, we were doing rappelling. A lot of times we had to lower our packs down. Some of the guys were carrying packs that were like 50 plus pounds. Each one of us had a boat with us. There were 5 of us total, so we had 5 different pack rafts. We had rappelling equipment, ropes, all of that stuff. So we were lowering packs down these big walls, and then we were rappelling, and it was pretty crazy, to say the least. Had a good time, a little nerve-wracking, a little scary, especially the 130-foot rappel, but super, super fun. We really had to work for it on day 2. So we got down that big rappel, and by the time we got down, let me come out a little bit here, to the river, to Horn Creek Rapid. It was about 12:30, 1 o'clock. We set up the beach, we had lunch, and then we inflated our boats. And we ended up actually floating across Horn Creek Rapid, right across the Colorado to this beach over here. We set up, we looked at the rapid, we studied it, and then we took about 2 hours to run the rapids. So we would get in the boats, run the rapids, come down to the end here, and then come up in here and then carry the boats, portage them back up to the top. And we did a couple different runs. One of the boats that I got to use, actually, I can't show you guys, can't tell you about. It's a prototype boat that they want to keep kind of top secret. Super, super fun to take it down those rapids. So far at this point, Horn Creek Rapids were the gnarliest, most, I guess, advanced rapids that I've ever done in a pack raft or in a kayak or anything. So it was really, really fun to do that. So we spent a little bit of time doing that. And right at about 4 o'clock, we ended up jumping on the river with all of our stuff loaded up. And then we ended up floating down the river. Total for the day, we had 3 miles of 3 river miles. So we ended up floating down the Colorado to get to our camp 2 of the trip for our second night in the canyon, which was right here at Granite Camp. This is probably one of the coolest campsites I think that I've ever had in the Grand Canyon. We actually camped right up here on the beach, and it was just phenomenal. There were so many campsites. I had this little campsite that was tucked right in the trees. It was really kind of secluded and nice, comfortable. It was a little warmer this night. The first night, I think it got down to like, I want to say high 20s, low 30s. This night, it was probably mid 30s, so a little bit warmer in the canyon. And just had an awesome night, sat around, ate dinner. And because the next day we didn't have a lot of miles to do, actually, if I click on day 3 here, we had 1.6 miles to make. We just kind of took our time in the morning, woke up that morning, relaxed a bit, hung out around camp, had like second breakfast. And then right off the bat, we got the boats together. We packed all of our gear in the boats, and then we lapped Granite Rapid. So did Granite Rapid, got out, went back down Granite Rapid. And I only ran the rapids one time in one of these boats, in one of the prototype boats. And this is the first time in my pack rafting history at this point that I got thrown out of the boat. So hit a big rapid, a big wave right at the end. The boat turned over. I had to swim for a little bit. Definitely kind of I guess kind of scary to swim for the first time in like rapids, but ended up being fine. Got out of it pretty quick. It was definitely exhilarating, definitely an adrenaline rush, but super fun. Got back in, and then, like I said, we only had 1.6 miles for the day. It was still pretty early. So what we ended up doing was we floated downriver here a little bit until we got to this spot, which is called 94 Mile Creek, which is just kind of a drainage, kind of like Horn. We pulled up on this beach right here, broke some stuff down, and then decided to go for a hike up 94 Mile Creek. Spent about 2 hours going all the way up this drainage. Ended up finding some really cool slot canyons, some like narrows. Hung out up there for about 2 hours, like all the way back up in here. And then we got back down to the beach, jumped back in our boats, had some lunch real quick, and then floated the rest of our 1.6 miles to get to our last campsite, which was Hermit Creek campsite, or Hermit Rapids. Because we were going to have to do a pretty early day, our last day, we decided to go ahead and run Hermit Rapids that night. So I ended up running Hermit Rapids 3 times, once in a different boat. I can't remember the name of the boat right now. The Mage. Ended up doing some stuff in the Mage, down through these rapids, and then ended up taking the prototype boat that I can't really show you guys a couple times down the rapids. Had an absolute blast. We totally wore ourselves out because we were basically going down the rapids all the way down here, coming up onto the beach, and then carrying the boat all the way back up here, getting in again, running the rapids, carrying the boat up here, running the rapids. So after doing that 3 times, we're pretty wore out from the end of a long day, and then ended up camping right here on the beach. Actually, I had a campsite literally right here. A little more exposed, a little chillier again, but overall a really awesome night. I think that night it got down maybe to 28, 29 degrees. When I looked at my watch, I think that's what it was when I woke up in the morning. And then for our last day, since we had such a big day coming out of the canyon, hiking back up to the rim with a ton of elevation gain, we got started pretty early at about 7 a.m. So I woke up at about 5, had breakfast, had my coffee, loaded up on some water. I had about 1.5 liters of water that I decided to carry out. And as you can see, we had about 8.4 miles. I think it was more like 8.5, probably closer to 9, maybe 8.8. And elevation gain for the day is 5,214 feet with an elevation loss of 1,027 feet. So like I said, got started early, hiked out with headlamps. It was definitely dark. And for the first time ever of all the hiking that I've done on the Hermit Trail and in that part of the canyon, I've never actually been down Hermit Creek. So we actually hiked out Hermit Creek, which was gorgeous. Absolutely a beautiful section of trail. So we hiked all the way out through here. Let's see if I can so you can see these lines over here, the blue and the red. That's the Tanto Trail, which I've done before. Those are actual other routes. So this is down in this creek, came all the way up here, and then right here where the Hermit Creek Trail meets the Tanto, back onto the Tanto Basin, and then at least for a while, we cruised. It was pretty somewhat flat. We cruised until we got right up here where the Tanto and the Hermit meet. And then as you can see from the map here, we just shoot straight up. So that's where our main elevation gain was for the day. So out of that 5,214 feet, my guess would be about 3,000 of that was right there in this section. So this area, let me zoom out a little bit. This area right here is called Cathedral Stairs. And this is one of my absolute favorite parts of the Grand Canyon. I love it in here. It's so beautiful. It's tough. It makes you work for it. It's super steep, but it's these kind of awesome switchbacks that kind of look like stairs. And there's actually some stone stairs in there. But this whole area is really beautiful. And luckily, because we got an early start on the day, it was not exposed at all. So sometimes when you go up through here, through Cathedral Stairs, and the sun's out, especially if you're there about 11, 10, well, 11, 11:30, 12, depending on what time of the year, it gets really exposed in there. So not only are you climbing all this elevation, it's hard, it's steep, but it's also super hot. So luckily, we were there at the perfect time. The sun hadn't hit that part. So went all up through Cathedral Stairs and then got up here to Breezy Point. And then from there, you can see it's pretty much a cruise. So you just kind of cruise along the red band, or on top of the red band here. And we cruised and we cruised and we cruised for most of the day. And then right here, there was actually a spring. You can probably see that. Yep, right there. Santa Maria Spring. So we did have a spring in case we needed water for the rest of the day. Up to that point, we were basically in the shade. It was cool. The high for the day was probably about 58 degrees. So I didn't really drink a lot of water. I still had 1.5 liters of water. I didn't fill up on water there. Did take a small break. But right there, as we come over through here to start making this final climb, that's when we finally got the sun. A bit of exposure. It got kind of windy, and then we just had this monster climb back out of the canyon, like this last 1.5 miles. And by the time we got up to the rim, it was about 12:30. So I always say you have a good day in the canyon if you get to the rim and it's still light outside. We got there really early. It was just past noon when we got up there, and jumped in the cars, put up all our gear, and drove back to the Bright Angel Trail. So there's the Hermit Trail, jumped in the cars, and then we drove the Greenway all the way back to the Bright Angel. So, yeah, it was an awesome, awesome trip. A great 3-night, 4-day trip in the canyon. And again, not just to do backpacking, but getting to mix in some canyoneering and some pack rafting. It was probably one of the funnest trips that I've ever done in the canyon. All my gear worked out great. If I had to do it again, I'd probably I carried a lot of bars for this trip because I had all this extra weight of the backpacking equipment, the pack rafting equipment, this new freestanding tent, which is obviously heavier than tents that I usually carry. So I was trying to keep my weight down a little bit. So on food, I took more bars than like sandwich material or for lunch and stuff. I was basically just eating bars. If I had to do this trip again, I would have just carried. I would take the weight penalty, carried more stuff to make sandwiches, like maybe some bread, some meat, cheese, stuff like that. Or maybe even some more freeze-dried meals to eat for lunch. But overall, it was a great trip. Definitely all my gear worked out just perfect. This tent was awesome for the nights that I used it. Again, if you guys want to check out what this is and all of my other gear that I carried, I'll leave that link to the gear list down below. Never ran out of water. Never got crazy tired. It was a perfect trip, honestly. For me, getting down in the Grand Canyon in December, January, February is a perfect time to get into the canyon because the weather's great. Water is usually pretty good in those springs and in those places. There's not too many people, especially when you're in these parts of the canyon. It was an awesome trip. If you guys want to check out that video that I did with Alpaca, where I went up and took a tour of their factory, again, I'll leave that link down below too. It's the video that I just put out on Friday if you guys missed it. And if you guys want to see me do more of these videos, these trip reports, these breaking everything down, talking about my trip, showing you guys the full specifics of the trip, the elevation gain and loss, the food, all of that stuff, leave me something down below and let me know what you guys think of these. I love doing this type of a format of video, off the cuff, raw, unedited, and sharing this information with you guys. So if you dig these, let me know. Leave a like, a thumbs up, whatever you call it, and show me some love on doing these. Because my plan is going forward, I want to do at least one of these, if not 2 of these a month. Because like I said, I do a lot of trips, and I don't always have time to produce full-on trip videos. So I really like this idea of sharing this information with you guys and showing you some of the kind of cool adventures that I do every single month that I don't get to always share complete full videos here on the channel. All right, guys. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I love you. And as always, thanks for watching.